Welcome to the Zulu One Podcast. Today we're joined by Vanja Vujovic, a breathwork teacher, facilitator, and somatic guide whose work blends nervous system regulation, trauma-informed practices, and consciousness exploration to help people reconnect with their bodies and their inner intelligence. Today we'll explore her journey and the work she's doing through breath and awareness. Let's begin. Venezuela, just now we woke up to the United States intervening in Venezuela. So,
okay.
Taking down, they went in with a military intervention and they extracted the Venezuelan president. So my dad's there now, and I saw, my ancestry from my Venezuelan side coming in, and I get to, oh man, this makes me emotional. I wasn't able to be at my grandparents' funeral. Now I can visit, so yeah. So Vanja, welcome. Sorry for starting this way, with
it's all welcome.
Falling, right? But, this work, we've all witnessed each other really bearing our souls in this process. And that's what healing is the ability to be vulnerable in front of another person and have that vulnerability. And I know you've certainly been my Sherpa in that process in breath work. And I'm really grateful for guiding us so expertly in that process. I love how you combine constellation work with breath work. And tell me a little bit about how you started this and how you got into this world.
So how I started was back in a few years back. I can't remember, like 2017, 18. My family, which is, weirdly enough, when I first came to United States, so I was here by myself for like a year. And then when my family came here, which was my twin sister, and you met her as well, she was like, oh my God, like you changed so much. Like, you're so angry and there's so much like of your personality that is not like a regular me, right? And she was like, I really think you should like go to therapy because I don't think our relationship is going to be good enough if we continue this way. But yes, I had a lot of like suppressed anger, a lot of just my whole personality shifted into like a survival state. And then I started going to therapy, which was like mental therapy, like talking and approaching healing from that perspective, which I think is amazing. But then after a while, it was clear that, there's some trauma work that needed to be done and like processing. Then I went into somatic therapy. That's how I found breathwork, family constellations as well, where I could have really like allow myself to process those emotions and go through that. And then after that, I was like, because I'm also big into meditation and like, not just like a calming, peaceful one, but like, transcendental meditation where you like get to really explore. And I just started getting these visions of me facilitating breath work, working with people. And it was just from this place of heart, it wasn't something that I did with like my thinking mind. It was more like, oh my God, like if I can feel this way, can you imagine like how many people's lives can be changed by, by this work? But it all just came from the heart. And I just went in straight away as soon as I saw that vision. I was like, okay, like I'm going for it. That's how I got into breathwork specifically. And it's been a wonderful journey. Yeah.
What a gift that your sister gave you, right? To say, to have the courage to say, hey, something's going on. So, you may want to look at that, right? And it's more than your twin sister to be able to have the confidence to say that or have the courage to say that, is a gift. And your family's originally from Montenegro, right?
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about, for people that don't necessarily know the history, I have been to Montenegro in my previous life. So very interesting that we have that connection. But tell me a little bit about that backstory.
So yeah, Montenegro is kind of like a very, very small, teeny tiny country. We have like less than 1 million. That's the population. And yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful country, beautiful nature, very like amazing people. And it's kind of everything's rooted in, you know, community. And when we talk about family and stuff, it's all rooted in family and in that connection, you know, but from that, it can also be like very, you know, patterns can arise where it's like the whole like Montenegrin or Balkan culture, if you will, has specific set of like traumas that we repeat. Most of them rooted in like poverty. There was a lot of wars going on, even in the, and I'm young, so I'm not sure that I'm saying this accurately, but yeah, there were wars even in like 1995, 1999. So it's like very relatively recent, and we can still like see the effects, you know, on how even maybe not consciously, but you can see it in people's like behaviors and emotional patterns of how that affected, you know, Montenegro as a whole and the whole Balkan, because Montenegro was a part of Yugoslavia, then they like separated. But yeah, there was a lot of like disturbance, a lot of poverty, a lot of survival, and you can still feel, even though like people are very connected and very coming from the heart, there is still that deep survival that the whole country is kind of still living in, especially, you know, the older generations, my parents' generations. It's still like that kind of like, oh, we gotta, you know, struggle to survive, and you know, you can't do what you love or you can't be your authentic self because the priority is survival rather than, you know, what it, you know, what could life look like. So that's kind of the background of Montenegro.
So how did you evolve in your journey to you start looking at, hey, where's this anger coming from? How did you uncover that piece?
So yeah, it was anger from like even previous generations, honestly, right? Yes. I did a lot of family constellations, so yes. But yeah, it was also from previous generations, which I found through constellations work, but it was also like all the anger that was suppressed throughout the years that, you know, you didn't have the permission to basically express that anger in any kind of way. In Montenegro, for us women, it was the way the culture would raise you was, you know, you should not express your anger. You should not express your emotions. You should not be too sensitive. You know, you should, again, fight and be in survival rather than expressing any of those emotions. So what would we do usually is like, oh, I need to be less and I need to shrink myself. I need to shrink my emotions. And then again, that all gets stuck from the, you know, trauma perspective and breathwork perspective. All of that gets stuck within, right? And it doesn't have any kind of outlet. It can't be out on the surface or be processed. And as it accumulated, it went from probably a little anger to like, you know, this situation happens, that other trauma happens. And then like year by year, that anger got accumulated. Again, for myself, I honestly was not aware that that was like from trauma because, as I already said, it's very like suppressing emotionally way of culture. Yeah. So, you know, I was not aware that anger was affecting me in that way at all until I started doing the work. And I was able to, become aware of those patterns and be like, oh my God, like this anger is not because I was angry on a highway because a person was cutting me off in the line or, you know, because someone said something to me. It was because it was all of the anger that was within basically exploding in any other way, while I was avoiding everything that was going on within, right? And I would say breathwork really did help me with that, you know, because I was able to really tune into those emotions to really express that anger. And here I am. And it's funny, like, if you saw a picture of me from like 8 years ago, I was like redhead. I was like all makeup. I was all in that like survival, like, you know, I'm like I'm a strong woman and I can do it everything by myself and no one can, you know, like approach me, where there was no gentleness at all. And again, once I worked through the anger, like I feel my whole like, you're coming back to your authentic self. Rather than being stuck in those personality patterns. But yeah, that was was the story with anger. Yeah.
How have you seen, and I really love this combination because I've done some of your workshops, the breathwork workshops, and I love how visceral breathwork is and how much it releases the trauma that's stored in the body. And Rob, our producer, just put up a book as The Body Keeps the Score. Was it Bessel Van Cork's the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and it's like, the body literally, you store that trauma in your DNA. And I think it was like Kellerman and did a 2015 study of the heritability of trauma from survivors of the Holocaust. Yeah. And it was Kellerman and Yehuda did a study on it, and they found the intergenerational transmission of trauma. It's the stuff that we've been talking about in breathwork and talking about in family constellations, that's a constant. It just happens, right? And especially, people that come from cultures that have a lot of pain, that's very obvious, right? Just starting the meditation on things that are going on in Venezuela, and then, things that have happened in the Balkans. Yeah. That we store that. We have that in our memory in some way. How did you approach the constellation world? How did you find out about it?
Constellation world, I was, again, funny enough, in Montenegro.
Okay.
Yes. So, I don't know if you have this, I'm sure you do, this experience where you're like on a healing journey, and then you're specifically focusing on something or a specific modality, and you feel like, oh, it's working out, and everything's amazing. And then there's like signs from the universe, if you will, or synchronicities, where something constantly gets in your radar, and you're like, what is going on, right? Like, I need to look up into this because like this is really like screaming at me. And so that was the case with family constellations. And there was a book, I can't remember, is it Mark something?
Mark Wallen. It didn't start with you?
Yes. And then, that book would constantly come somehow into my like awareness, whether it was a friend saying like, oh my God, you should read this book, or my therapist, or, I'm opening my social media, and again, it's there. And I was like, okay, like, cool, but, I'm going to look into it when I have the time, but it would just keep coming up. Around that time as well, people around me started talking about family constellations, and I was like, okay, what is it? How does it work? All of the things. And then, of course, one of my friends was like, well, if you really want to like learn about it, you should really look into the TV show, which honestly, I watched it like 2-3 times with friends because I was like, that's the easiest way for me to explain family constellations. I don't know if it does the justice.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if it does.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of like the easiest way to like, because how would I explain, what the family constellations are? So one of my friends was like,
for the audience, the TV show is Another Self on Netflix, right?
On Netflix, yes. And it's a fun one, honestly. I like the fun parts of it, so it's not like too heavy. But yes, so they were like, okay, you should watch this TV show, and I watched the TV show. And when I tell you, I was like, that was still kind of like the middle of my healing journey. So I was like, if these things exist, I'm like, how is this even possible? I had such a curiosity because it was like, oh my God, this is really out there for my perception at the time. This is really out there. So how, like, is this even real that, someone can represent my mom or my dad in this kind of way? And just like, basically, show me what's going on. And I was like, oh my God, like, if this really, like, I honestly did not believe it was like working in that way, like that the field was working in that way. Like that was just like outside of my box of thinking at the time. Right. But I was like, okay, once the opportunity shows up again, I didn't know you or Alicia at the time or Eric, like I didn't know anyone. So I didn't know like who's a good facilitator or nothing. When I started reading the book in my plane to Montenegro. And that same week I go, it was all the synchronicities, honestly. I go to the workshop of yoga, and the whole group, there was like 10 Montenegrin women, and they were all talking about family constellations. And I'm like, this is just nuts. Like, can you guys please tell me where to go? Like, just tell me. There's a workshop in 2 weeks. And if you want to come, just come, you know? So my first experience with family constellations was actually in Montenegro, which I honestly really love because it was on my native language. It was all with my people. It was with working with the traumas of Balkan people, which I think, I'm not sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like every culture has a specific kind of like, not a circle, but kind of like a specific set, if you will, of beliefs, traumas, and things. Of course, things overlap throughout the whole world. But again, Balkan has a specific, if you want a blueprint in the field, right? So like working with my people, my first family constellations on Montenegrin language, it was just mind blowing. And when I sat to like, do my work, right? And this lady was like, okay, you know, tell us why you're here, da, 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 da. And I honestly can't remember what was my first work about because it fully shifted into something that I didn't expect. But when I took out my mom, my dad, it was the way those people behaved in the field was exactly the same as like that lady would say the same words as my mom. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually real. You know, it was such a profound experience for me that I just fell in love with the whole technique. I went to family constellations retreats, again, in the Balkans. It was just so much deep, raw inner work. And what I love about family constellations is, you know, that because again, right, our human mind can be so limited. And again, from the trauma perspective, we do suppress a lot of things. So we might not be aware of a lot of things, right? And with family constellations, it really shows you, like, it just widens your perspective on like, hey, like this is what's actually going on. This is where the problem was. Like you can really work through it. And from this raw perspective, right, from not hiding, I feel, at least on the workshops that I've been on to, like people are so open because your whole personality and your whole life comes out into the field, and like you're like, there's no sense for me to hide any part of myself, you know, and everyone comes from that place, which I think is like, yeah, the beauty. But yeah, in short, that was my beginnings with family constellations. And yeah, I still do it. Yeah, it's always fun.
It's such a powerful modality and technique, and you're totally right. Every country has its own flavor. Every culture has its own flavor of trauma, right? That it's very specific to that system, and that's, you know, I'm talking to a friend of mine, and we're writing this book on leadership and really understanding how systems work. And it's like, it's systems upon systems upon systems upon systems upon systems. And the farther you get away from the epicenter, the more I think it dilutes. That's why it's so powerful when you're speaking your mother tongue in constellations and you say the words in your language, right? It's because that speaks really to the language of your heart, right? It's like, it's really beautiful to put it in that way. And it's so beautiful to see that, you know, and we saw this in Romania, and we've seen it in countries that have high conflict, right? That they're leading the way in healing. It's wild that you say, like in constellations, like Montenegro is leading the charge, and they have these groups of women and doing this stuff. And here in the U.S., it's not really known. A lot of people are like, I've never. What are you talking about? Right? Just
honestly, I was really surprised of how much family constellations are. Like everyone knows about family constellations in Europe, at least around the countries that I know, and it's a very like a. If you're not going to psychotherapy, right? It's one of the things that people are going to talk about, like, oh, you should try this modality, you know? And again, we're not a big country, so, you know, maybe it makes sense, but not really. And I also have some friends from like Turkey, which again, if you're not familiar with, you are, but yeah, Montenegro is like right next to Greece, right next to Turkey, across Italy, so all of those countries. And yeah, like in Turkey, they're so popular. I actually just met a friend like a few months ago at Joe Dispenza retreat. And she was like, yeah, I've done so many family constellations. She's from Turkey. And I was like, oh, like, what family constellation? She's like, it's so popular. There's so many facilitators. And she actually did some constellations with Eric too. And I was like, oh, come on, man. Like, wow. So random. Yeah. But they are very like spread. At least I have an impression more in Europe and that kind of area rather than in United States. Yeah.
So tell me, I know the podcast is about family constellations and breathwork and modalities that are all aligned with it. And I keep hearing, and I don't know much about Joe Dispenza, but I've heard that he's incredible. And I know that you're involved with that community. What are the similarities? What are the things where does it, I know all this stuff meets in the middle, like I say. But what's your experience with that? How has it been?
Wow, I could talk for 3 hours about it.
Let's do it.
Oh my God. Let me see. Okay, so a backtrack. One of my big healing modalities that really helped me on a journey were, again, family constellations, psychotherapy, to some degree, somatic work, breathwork, and Dr. Joe's work, specifically his meditations. What I love about his work is that, again, he doesn't focus so much not so much on you need to release your trauma or you need to fix this about yourself. There's something, I feel like sometimes us and I've been there so many times in the past, okay, what is the next thing that I need to fix? Oh, I don't know, my business is not working out. So maybe I need to release there's still some kind of trauma that I still didn't release, or kind of going into this loop. I think there is a tendency, and again, this is just my personal opinion, but I think there is a tendency that we are on this journey constantly trying to fix something about ourselves, right? And go deeper and dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And again, I've done so much breath work, so much family constellation, a lot of trauma work, right? That in one point it becomes an unconscious habit. Okay, what is the next thing that needs to be resolved? And with Dr. Joe's work, it's more about, okay, if you could be aware of what are your, he kind of talks about it your emotions, your behaviors, your attitudes, your belief systems, all of that is creating your personal reality. So whatever you think, whatever you feel, however you behave is creating this world around you, right? And again, I think, yes, our past traumas, everything that we inherited also affects us if we don't work through those things. But there's also a component of okay, now that you worked through these things, and I talk about this a lot in my breathwork workshops as well, that I don't believe that it should be only about trauma work. It should be if I'm living on this planet, right? If I'm living this beautiful human experience with all the pain and all the joy, how can I live this life as true, as authentic as I can to myself, to my experience? And this is the perspective that I really got from his work, because it's more on this side of yes, I'm looking into my behaviors, I'm looking into my patterns, but how can I change them on a regular basis every day and basically become a new personality? And so through his meditations, and there's a bunch of them, every single one is good, honestly. But yeah, through his meditations, you can really reprogram your mind, which again, from this other perspective, the mind is also important, right? We shouldn't ignore the mind either into the, I think it sometimes gets a bad reputation in somatic work, but we should not ignore the mind and the way it functions, because it's serving us a great purpose. And so his work is a lot about that. If you could actually realize that you are the creator of your life, and the way that you think, behave, and act, and the emotions that you feel are creating your reality, how would you live your life? How would you behave in every certain, in everyday situations? How would you, let's say, approach any area of your life where you kind of feel stuck, let's say, what new belief can you believe? What new emotions can you experience? And you're actively working through that in meditations and basically reprogramming your mind. That's kind of the basics of it. But then there's a whole talk about, and I'm not going to go into depth with this, but this is what I learned from him, is when you go deep into a trance, into a deep meditation, again, through breath work as well, you get into these altered states of consciousness. So you get into these altered states of consciousness where your thinking brain is not as active, you're not overthinking, you're not overanalyzing. And sometimes, again, it takes time for us to get used to it because we tend to overthink, right? So it's like once you kind of shut down that prefrontal cortex, you can actually access this, what he calls the quantum field. And in its basis, I'm again not going to go into depth with it because it's a large topic. But once you access this, it's basically all potential. It's all frequency. It's all vibration. And again, I think we can also correlate that in a way with family constellations because you are again entering a specific kind of a field. I was really contemplating on like, how do I connect all these modalities and find sense, of them all and where they like interconnect. And I was really thinking about dispense and family constellations at one point. But yes, I came to a conclusion like there's a field, right, in family constellations as well. And everything is frequency and everything is vibration from this Dr. Joe's work, right? Everything is frequency, everything is vibration. Your every thought, every emotion, everything that you have within has a specific frequency, a specific vibration, right? A emotion of joy has a specific vibration and you can feel it even throughout your body. Frequency of anger again has a specific frequency and you can again feel this within your body when you're feeling anger. And so with family constellations, how I see it is that there's a field, right, that kind of is opened when you do family constellations. And I feel like all those representatives, the family history, everything comes out through who represents my mom, let's say. It represents the frequency, right? So it just comes out. That's how I kind of connected. And what I love about family constellations and this kind of work where I found that like kind of connection was that he is teaching you, okay, like once you're in this quantum field, you can actually change the patterns. Like what is going on? Like how are you feeling? You have a belief that you're not worthy enough, that you can't ever be abandoned. I'm just throwing stuff out, right? You can actually change frequency just by thought alone, and you're basically changing that field. In family constellations, you're essentially doing the same thing, right? You're changing the patterns in your own family system field, right? I mean, that's kind of where I got a correlation there. And I just think it's beautiful because, right, this is how change happens. It's not by just us thinking about it. And again, I think it's very important for people to talk about, and have that kind of like, if we talk about talk therapy, that's very relevant to get the awareness, right? But in these modalities, it's about how do I change this energy, this frequency, these places where I've been stuck. And it's such a beautiful thing to witness both in his work and in family constellations of how change happens when you change those patterns in the field. Yeah.
No, and man, you bring up such a good point. And I think I'm thinking of it the same way in like really because we're all accessing this phenomenon, right? It's this phenomenological place, call it the quantum field, call it the Holy Spirit, call it, Mickey Mouse, Disneyland, whatever you want to call it. There's a thing out there that we all connect to, and it has information, and that we can interact with it, and that it has an influence in our life, and it has an influence on the people that came before and the people that will come after us. And that there's like a systemic momentum to it. And that's like the framework that I've always used is systems. And I'm like, it's like, I'm a quantum systems explorer, just kind of thinking of things like, how do I put this in a place where I can make it make sense in my logical brain so I can chew through, what this looks like. And, I'm just attracted to this Joe Dispenza thing. I've had a couple people talk about it, and and it seems like he shifts to the thriving part of life, right? That it's like, no, you're the captain of this systemic vessel that's going through the phenomenological ether of the quantum non-here, right? And that you actually can take the steering wheel and drive it to certain places through these techniques and modalities. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting, because you're right. There are some people that are like, I need to do a constellation. And then they just kind of find the next constellation thing to do, rather than being like, I've gotten to this level. I've dealt, constellation was a tool that got me, maybe you were in crisis and you had to take medication, and that was one tool, right? And then you went to another place and you had to go to talk therapy, and that was another tool. And then you might have found breathwork or family constellations or Vipassana guided meditation or whatever the thing gets to, and that gets you to another level. And then Joe Dispenza gets you to another level. And then you may go to a Tony Robbins thing, or you may go to another, whatever modality you find that we're exploring through this that takes you to a certain place to say, all right, I'm navigating this field. There's things that I can't see that have influence on it. However, I heal that and detach myself through it. And then now I have agency free of those things to create what my destiny is going to look like and move forward.
Exactly. Yes. And it's such a beautiful thing, right? Because, and I think also a big point there is also that sometimes we get so, again, I was in that space as well, we get so reliant on the technique, right? It's like, oh, the technique is going to save me, right? We all got stuck at one point in that spot, right? And it's like, how can I realize that I am my own hero? I am my own master. I am I am my own healer. Like, I can do this, right? And it's like taking, what you said, the wheel in your hands. Like, if you could realize that you actually can change your life in this specific way and that you are the one who's doing it, sometimes maybe we shy away from that because, again, we were taught like, you should always listen to other people. We're getting so programmed, all of the things, right? So it's like we actually forgot that we can create our lives and that we are in charge. Like, this is your body, this is your mind, this is your field, if you will. How do you want to live your life? And that's what I really, really love about his work, is that it really shows you this other perspective of how can you live without, just coming into this victim mode, into this like survival state, which, yes, all of us have been there. But once you're aware of it, like, if you're aware and you don't do anything with that information, it just doesn't do anything, right? But if I'm aware, and same goes with family constellations, right? You get so much awareness. And then it's like, what do I do with this information afterwards? Am I going to do anything different than my ancestors if we're looking at it from that perspective, with their blessings, with their honor? How am I going to live this life? Can I appreciate all of the things that maybe they couldn't do, instead of like judging what my mom did, what my dad did? What if I can actually appreciate all of the gifts, even if it's just your life, which is like, wow, what a blessing. I mean, people could really like think about it. It's like a really big thing. Can I actually appreciate all of the things that they did for me, however they looked like, take a turn and go and, see how my life can look like, can I do anything better? Can I take their gifts as well with me and into this beautiful life? Like, how can I create this beautiful life for me? Yeah.
And you mentioned the victim, right? Like that victim to victor transition. And the problem, and not the problem, but the pattern that I've seen that emerges is like, when I'm in the victim position, I at least have my attention on something. You're like, that's what's hurting me. That's the bad thing. That's the pain. And I'm receiving the oppression from this thing. And whether that's a relationship, your parents, your family, whatever, like the country, whatever those things are, you at least have a focus and a north. And you're like, I'm here because of that. And there's a lot of autopilot in that, right? And when you heal and you let go of that, you spend some time kind of wandering the darkness, the forest of like, what do I do now? It's my responsibility. And I think that's what you're talking about is like, oh, well, I can go over there, or I could go over there and I can drive my little boat in the, quantum cosmic space of reality, right? That I can say, but if you drive yourself off of a cliff, it's your responsibility. And that's tough for a lot of people That's tough for people to say, now it's my problem. Now it's not somebody else's problem that I had this oppressor, victim, victor, this whole thing going on, that I can say, now I'm okay. I'm going to shoot, and I'm going to go in my little tugboat and I'm going to navigate to wherever I'm going to go. But you're in control and you got to figure out what the next step is, right?
Next step is, big time. And, I think, I think this work can be hard, right? I mean, we all know it can be challenging, and that's the reality of it. But I think the big question there is like, do you still want to live your life in this sense of like, I feel like victimized, which again, I was there too, right? All of us were. It's not it's like a pattern that we go, I mean, it's just a pattern that we go into like throughout life, like, oh, poor little me. And then it's like, do you actually enjoy being in that when you really look into this, victim side of you? Like, do you really enjoy not having any like agency for your life? And I again come from this space of like, if you could really know how life can be like, when you let go of this personality of that victim state and you really take the wheel in your hands, like if you actually knew how amazing life could be like, you would put the effort in, right? And there's the belief there that comes in like, oh yes, I believe it can happen for other people, but I'm not sure if this can happen to me, and this is like this uncertainty and like a level of self-trust that we develop throughout the years. The more you do the work, the more you focus on those things like, oh, how do I want my life to look like? You build that self-trust, you build that self-agency, and again, it takes time to be from, oh, I can't, I'm not the creator of my life and I can't do anything, to this like, oh my God, I actually am doing these things and I am responsible. Again, I think it is hard at times. It can be very challenging. And I had those experiences, right? So many times. And I just want to come back to your point about that. What is hard about that is that, and I talk about this in breathwork as well, I tell them like, there is going to be a point in your breathwork journey when you breathe and you release those emotions, they flow away, right? There was grief that was stuck within you, you let them go, you let it go. And then there's going to be this period of when there's basically nothing, you're just breathing and there is nothing. What do we tend to do with this is like, oh my God, I was feeling all of these emotions, all of these things inside of me. Now when they're gone, I don't know who I am. Like, and that's the hard part, right? I feel so, who am I if I am not this personality?
Yeah.
Like, and what am I supposed to do now, right? There's no guidance, there's no navigation, there's no one to tell you like, hey, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're wondering a little bit, you're lost, like, oh my God, what do I do now? How do I create this new thing that I'm trying to become? And for example, for me, I at that time when this specific thing was going on, I didn't actually have like a mentor or a guide who would be like, hey, like when you feel this, like you can actually create these things. I kind of had to figure it out by myself and like read the books and be like, oh my God, I can do this, and kind of like found a way. And it turned out very good. But I think it's also very nice when you have someone to say like, hey, you're not going crazy. It's okay. Like you are reinventing yourself. You're reinventing your personality. This is what you can do. And again, I think, in my breathwork sessions, I guide people towards that kind of like that path where it's like, okay, like once you feel this nothingness, allow yourself to be there. It's an empty space where you get to create from. Like, if you're not this anymore, what do you want to be in your life? And then there's parts where we really go into that kind of like a creation mode, I call it. It's like, what emotions do you want to feel? How do you want to live your life? And it's like, you can see people's faces, everything like changing as they breathe, because it's like, okay, I actually get to choose, And again, it takes time, it takes work, but I feel, it's like as if you're studying or, doing anything in life, it takes work. But once you like really feel like, oh my God, I actually know how to do this, life gets really, really exciting. So yeah.
Yeah, that's, what comes up before is the loyalty to the pain. It's like, if I'm not in pain, then who am I? And that hit like a ton of bricks. It's like, so many people, their identity is tied to their suffering. It's like, in order for me to belong to this family, I have to suffer, or I have to get divorced, or I have to, have abandonment, or I have to marry an abusive spouse, or I have to be the abuser, or I have to, and you have these things. This loyalty is like, man, how strong, and this keeps coming up for me, is like how strong the force of loyalty is in the family system. And healing feels like betrayal to a broken system.
Yes, it does. Yeah. And, I feel like, why wouldn't it make sense? Us as humans, there's like studies done on this, like connection is our main thing. It's like the thing that keeps us alive. There's like studies that show like if you don't have connection, if you're lonely, all of the things, like your lifespan goes shorter. So it's like we need connection. We need that sense of belonging. We're not individualists, at least that's what I believe in, that we are actually people of connection, of community, of like, how can I be a part of something? And once that's like threatened, then I'm like, oh my God, like I'm just like, yeah, like what am I supposed to do now? I'm like outside, excluded. So how am you're going to navigate this world? Yeah.
You know where that comes from?
Tell me.
So we have a biological hard coding that if we get excluded, we die.
We die, exactly.
We have such a need to belong. And so if you take a serial killer, a psychopath, the worst punishment that you can do to somebody in prison is to put them in exclusion. They have zero contact with it. That's how painful it is to people, like how ingrained it is into us as human beings that our need to connect with other people, even if the connection is whatever, that you can do that with people that are in prison. You can say, I'm going to further exclude you. I'm going to put you in the hole or whatever they call it in the exclusion. And they don't talk to anybody. They're just alone. And it's like the worst thing. That's the worst suffering that you can inflict on a human being. And the anti-exclusion is healing, connection, and connecting to your ancestry.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a interesting family constellation story with that, because like when I first started doing the work, right, everyone in my family thought I was like, oh my God, what is going on with her? Like she's gone on a sidetrack, whatever. And no one was into the work, like no one. And I've done like family constellations around that time, like where I felt like still angry with my parents. I still felt like, oh, you did this to me, you did that to me, like this is your fault, da, 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 da. And once I did a few family constellations on those topics, and I came into this sense of acceptance, even if I choose this path, on a deep, I don't know how to describe it, even if with your eyes open, you maybe do not fully approve of what I'm doing, I still feel like I belong, even though I'm choosing another path, I'm still a part of this system. I don't know how to better explain it, but yeah, that's like this sensation. And I was setting up my boundaries, right, when they were needed. And, I would feel a pushback and it would, get like heated. But then after a time, I feel, maybe that's the understanding, like that's missing. I feel that after a time, the family unit, the system changes as well, because you're changing, right? The pieces are starting to move on a deeper level, just because you actually stayed in this new personality that you are. The family system also starts to change. And then I had this, I started doing the work, then my sister came in, my brother, everyone came on board, right? And we had this period, again, my father, I have so much love for him, and I'm so grateful for family constellations, because man, it's just wild, how much you can change, the family systems and relationships. But when I was growing up, my relationship with my dad was not that good. He was, Montenegrin man. It's like, oh, I gotta be the strong one, provide for the family. There's no emotions whatsoever, no emotional intelligence, everything is suppressed. So I never had not a good relationship, just like no relationship with my dad. It was just like, okay, like he's there, then he's not there. And then he's traveling for work, and that was it. And when we started growing up, we started developing a relationship, but it was more of he would be like, oh, like you should, let's say you're an immigrant in the United States, you should buy a house, you should, again, comes from the wars and all of the things, like you should have a security, you shouldn't chase your dreams or take a risk. You should keep with that job that's paying you so well, even though you're not super happy about it. So it was that kind of kind of criticizing. Now, from my understanding, that's criticizing because he wants the best for you, right? And I think it's important for us to get to those realizations. But there was still a boundary that needed to happen, right? And with my siblings, we were dude, if you continue to call us and just be oh, you should do this, you should do that, and then criticize, like, we're just not going to talk to you. And that's it, And again, this is a big thing in the family system. It's like, oh, like someone is actually setting a firm boundary, And he was like, like, yeah, bye-bye. We did not. We really set the boundary. We were like, we didn't call him for a full month. And I'm not joking. It was a full-on boundary. And then he calls and he's like, hey, like what's going on? My kids are not calling me, like what's happening? And we were like, Dad, we told you we were not going to call you if you continue behaving in this way. And this is the moment where it finally clicked in his head. Oh my God, like, should I change to have a better relationship with my children, So this is my point of this example, is just to show. And like, since then I just can't describe to you like our relationship. Like, I know about my dad's past. I go to Montenegro. We go on these like road trips. We can actually connect. He's opening up. We're hugging. Like, it developed so much, but was this other thing needed that wasn't easy for us as well, where we were the ones in the family like setting a full-on boundary. And it possibly could have went another way, I don't know, but because we changed in the family system, then he also had the opportunity to change, and he chose to do so. And now the whole family system changed, right? The behaviors, the patterns, the emotions, So I think that's the power of this work, is that it's not always easy, but like, it's so rewarding, like, I'm just telling you, like, our whole relationship with our entire family, everything's just so different,
And what you're describing is systemic resistance. It's the system wanting to go back to the old way, right? It's like saying, hey, what's going on? And you hear, I took a class on, and the guy that was the teacher of the class was, he was a counselor for people that were for addiction, right? And he was like, when people are healing and dealing with their stuff in addiction, it's like the person learns to dance to a new song, right? The addict, right? They say the problem is the addict, and then the family is like, really, it's a systemic issue, right? But the addict is like, I'm not going to dance, merengue anymore. I'm going to start dancing salsa. And the family has to say, I'm either going to learn how to start dancing salsa or I'm going to stop dancing. So they have the choice as well to like adapt to the new song and the new dance and the new thing and the new dynamic and stuff. And they'll try to still dance merengue and, to make like something shifted. I'm trying to like, this isn't what, every time I hit this button, I would get this reaction. When I don't hit this button, there's this subconscious loyalty to a broken system. And then they can either stop dancing because they're so loyal to the system, or they can adapt and release that pattern. And that's what healing looks like. That's the beauty of it, is that actually healing looks like when you no longer have those conversations and things slowly shift to a new dynamic and a new paradigm.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Honestly, yes. That's how I feel about it as well, And, in some points, people are going to choose to, not continue dancing in your life. And again, it's like, okay, like, like it's,
and that's okay
sometimes.
Too.
And that's okay too. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Those were my life. Yes. Yeah.
And that's okay too. So Vanja, this has been, I hope this is one of many conversations that we have. But if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to learn more about breath work, if they want to learn more about getting, doing healing work, how do they get a hold of you?
So the primary, I would say, is either my website, which is my name, Vanja Vujovic.com. All of the information is about events, and we do retreats, which we're doing a retreat with Zulu One next week, which is sold out. But if you want to hear about any new retreats, workshops, events, yes, my website is the best spot, or I would say Instagram, also a good spot to be notified about everything. Yeah.
And my last question will be, is there anything that we should have covered that we didn't cover, or anything that you think that I should have asked you?
No, I think we kind of covered a lot of aspects. Yes.
Yeah. And I want to do a deep dive in the next one into Joe Dispenza's work, which seems fascinating as a second phase or an add-on to what we're doing. So I'm that's really exciting.
Yeah. I told you I could talk about it for a long time. So
for hours. Yeah. Vanja, thank you so much. This has been awesome. It's great seeing you, and I'm wishing you guys the best on the workshop. I know it's going to be the retreat.
You.
I think it's going to be really fun. So, yeah.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. Yeah. I look forward to seeing you hopefully soon too.
Yeah, hopefully soon. Send my best to your family.
I will. Right. Thank you, John.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Zulu One Podcast. If you found value in today's podcast, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything to us. And thank you for being part of this journey.